everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock with the estate and asset protection planning firm BarthCalderon. Welcome to Wealth Protector TV. Some of you may be listening to this on Wealth Protector Radio, so thank you. Really excited today for this episode. I'm here with my colleague, Mike Bader. Mike, can you hear me okay?
Great, Paul. How are you doing today?
Excellent. And so this episode is a great one. Mike's an expert in tax and estate and asset protection planning. And if you've listened to this show before, you'll know that at our firm, we do a ton of workshops all across the country to many incredible groups like the California Apartment Association, Vistage International, the Women Presidents Organization, and just a ton of others. And we just recently did a workshop for a really excellent group of rental income property owners up in the Bay Area and had a standing room only. It was great. A lot of questions. And so for this episode, we wanted to focus on a front burner issue for folks who own rental income property. And it is how to own the property properly in regards to estate planning, asset protection planning. And so, Mike, I know you're going to jump in here. You have some slides to show us, but let's start from the beginning of how people normally, or a lot of what we see in ownership, and let's go from there.
Thanks, Paul. I'll try to be as brief as I can and concise as I can. So the best way for me to talk about things is to talk about real life examples.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to share right now. Give me 1 minute to bring up a.
There it is. I see it.
Okay. Real good.
What are we looking at here?
Well, this is typically what happens when a client comes to us and they're holding property. They don't have estate planning in place. They don't have any asset protection in place. They're holding title to things as husband and wife, depending upon what jurisdiction they live in.
Yeah.
And they have, for example, rental agreements with tenants, and they're the owners of the property and they're the property managers of the property. And they all hold it in their own individual names. And the concern here is, number one, we don't have any estate planning set up so that in case there's an incapacity event or there's a death in the family, that things are set up for passing the assets on to the heirs. And number two, we don't have any asset protection in this particular form.
Yeah, and you and I talking offline, we see a lot of this, and I think the number is 60% of Americans don't even have any estate planning, and so we see this a lot, and it can lead to problems.
Right. So ultimately, the first thing we'll attack is the estate planning issue.
Right.
And to avoid probate and the problems related with probate, we'll set up a living trust, which the husband and the wife are not only the people who settle the trust and put the property in, but it's for their benefit for their lifetimes. They're going to be the managers of the trust.
Right.
And if they're incapacitated, someone else can step in very, very easily and take over financial management while they're recuperating or unable to manage their affairs. Now, typically what will happen is that the tenants for City Walk will pay their rents to the living trust, and the living trust will hold bank accounts inside its name. And likewise, Orange will pay their rent and Corona will pay their rent into the trust, and the trust will pay all the expenses out. And then at the end of the year, they have to file their income tax returns, and they have to go through the trust account to figure out what expenses are related to what particular property.
Okay, so we go from the worst case scenario of just owning property just in your single name, no estate planning, no asset protection, not good. Now here's the second level. This is great. It's got some estate planning, good. But now what about asset protection?
This won't offer us any asset protection because the trust is revocable. And
Okay.
that will not protect an incident to take place in City Walk from affecting Orange or the Corona rental properties, or even maybe the investment properties.
And that's always a big thing we hear. Hey, I'm asset protected because I've got a living trust, I'm fine. And your first response is, no, you're not. Living trust, no asset protection.
I wish, I wish you were, but unfortunately it's not the case under California law.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll create a business entity for each rental property.
So what are we looking at here? You've living trust underneath, those are LLC. So there's 3 properties.
So we're setting up an entity, Red Lollipops, to hold the City Walk apartments.
Okay.
We're setting up a separate entity, Tutti Frutti, to hold the Orange property. And we're creating Pretty You to hold the Corona property.
Yeah, very professional sounding LLCs too.
I make them up as I go. So what happens now is that the title originally was in the living trust. Now the title to the City Walk apartments are held under each LLC's name. So Red Lollipops holds the title to City Walk. And now the rental arrangement is that the tenant will make the payments to Red Lollipops LLC. The tenant in Orange will make the payments to Tutti Frutti, and Corona will make them to Pretty You.
Okay.
And the manager of each of these LLCs can be the husband or the wife or both without incurring any personal liability for anything that happens inside the entity.
Okay.
When they get the rents, they'll put it into a checking account that will be specifically owned by the LLC.
Oh, okay.
From that checking account, they're going to pay bills, mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, whatever the case may particularly be, so that that checking account will now have all the deposits and all the disbursements that should be necessary to prepare the income tax returns at the end of the year.
Got it.
Making it a little bit more simple. Now, the LLC is now owned by the living trust, and so the title to this LLC is going to show the member as the living trust, which is now also controlled by the husband and the wife, but it provides protection between this entity and this entity, and from this entity. Also, it protects the resident and it protects the investment account. So it makes it really an outstanding protection vehicle in case anything should happen that would be devastating and insurance didn't cover the entire liability.
Yeah, and I hear you talk often about this structure, how this works efficiently, and also that people got to be really careful about setting up those LLCs properly and maintaining them properly, because if it's not done right and you just click and set it up, and something does happen and you need it to be there and it doesn't work properly, then people get hurt emotionally and financially. So you got to do it right and maintain it right.
Correct, Paul. There is a little bit of maintenance that's involved from year to year, and you just need to make sure that you're taking care and renewing the various filings and various fees structures that go along with the LLCs.
And I got to mention too that we have a maintenance program here. I know people who know us are aware of that, but we help you with your LLC maintain it properly so you're always in compliance. So Mike, this is great information, and I think that as we've gone through this, my takeaway is that if you own rental income property, or if you own a business too for that matter, and it's in just your own name or the name with your spouse, or even if it's just in a living trust, you really should investigate how the LLC works for your particular situation to get that asset protection. Good takeaway?
Agreed. One last thing I can throw in, Paul, is as husband and wife, owning an LLC really doesn't change your tax return filing requirements very much. You continue to file your returns the way you have. If you're here in California with an LLC, you have to make sure you file an LLC annual return, which is basically informational and paying the annual fee. But outside of that, the fee should be tax deductible, at least for federal tax purposes. And moving forward, you should be living the life of Riley.
Thanks, Mike, so much. Great information as always. Everybody who's on listening, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.
All right.